The Zirith were a race steeped in their own superiority. For millennia, they had ruled over countless planets, mastering the art of conquest with cold precision. Their medical knowledge was the stuff of legends, allowing them to heal wounds and extend their lives beyond what most species could dream. They saw themselves as untouchable, the pinnacle of evolution, and their empire stretched across the stars, with entire worlds brought to heel under their technological dominance. Each planet they conquered was stripped of its resources, its people enslaved or eliminated, all for the continued prosperity of the Zirith. Humans, by comparison, were insignificant. To the Zirith, Earth was a minor planet in the galaxy, its people primitive and weak. The Zirith had observed humanity from afar, noting their wars, their struggles, and their painfully short lives. Yet, despite their perceived inferiority, humans had always piqued the Zirith's curiosity. Something about their resilience, their stubborn refusal to perish in the face of hardship, made the Zirith pause. Still, they dismissed these musings as inconsequential. When the time came for Earth to fall, they expected it to crumble like all the others. The invasion was swift. The Zirith descended from their ships in an overwhelming force, their technology rendering Earth's defenses obsolete within hours. Massive city-shattering weapons leveled entire regions, and their soldiers, clad in impervious armor, swept through human strongholds with ease. Earth's military, though valiant in their defense, found themselves hopelessly outmatched. The Zirith had seen this before, a few days of resistance, maybe weeks in some cases, but eventually, the natives always broke. Yet, Earth fought back harder than anticipated. For every human soldier that fell, it seemed another rose to take their place. Earth's armies, though armed with outdated weapons compared to the Zirith, employed strategies and tactics that confused the invaders. Guerrilla warfare, ambushes, traps, they were unorthodox but effective, buying the humans more time. This surprised the Zirith commanders, but not enough to slow their advance. They were confident the outcome was inevitable. Humans, like all the others, would soon be crushed. During one particularly brutal assault, a squad of human soldiers was captured. They were battered and broken, their bodies riddled with injuries that should have left them for dead. The Zirith, ever curious, decided to transport a few of these soldiers to one of their medical research facilities. They had heard whispers of Earth's ability to recover from injury but had never seen it firsthand. Now, with human specimens in their possession, they had the perfect opportunity to explore this resilience. One soldier, in particular, caught their attention. He had been struck multiple times during the skirmish, his body left mangled by the Zirith's weapons. He was on the brink of death when they brought him in. By all accounts, he shouldn't have survived the trip. Yet, when the Zirith doctors began their examination, something remarkable happened. The man's wounds, gaping and deep, began to close on their own. The aliens watched in stunned silence as flesh and bone knitted together, as if the injuries were nothing more than minor scrapes. Within minutes, the soldier, who had been minutes away from death, was breathing steadily, his body whole again. This wasn't natural. The Zirith, with all their medical advancements, had never seen anything like it. Their technology could heal, yes, but this? This was different. The man hadn't been treated, he hadn't received any aid, yet his body had recovered on its own. It was regeneration, a process the Zirith had believed impossible without external manipulation. Intrigued and unnerved, the Zirith scientists immediately began their studies. Over the following days, they subjected the soldier to a series of increasingly invasive tests. They cut him open, broke his bones, inflicted every injury they could think of, and each time, the man healed. His body, no matter the trauma, simply wouldn't stay broken. The Zirith's initial shock soon turned to a frenzied desire for understanding. How was this possible? They dissected his DNA, ran every scan they had, but the answers eluded them. It was as if this human had unlocked a biological secret that even their greatest minds couldn't comprehend. The Zirith leadership was informed, and what had begun as a simple curiosity now spiraled into a potential game-changer for the Empire. If this regenerative ability could be harnessed, it would mean not just immortality, but an army of soldiers who could never be killed. The Zirith, who had already considered themselves invincible, would become gods. As the tests continued, the Zirith began to realize just how far they had underestimated humanity. The human resistance was no longer a simple nuisance, it was a potential threat. If other humans shared this regenerative ability, then Earth might not be the easy conquest they had initially believed. The Zirith had conquered countless worlds, but none had posed a challenge like this. And so, they intensified their efforts. More humans were captured and brought to the research facilities, subjected to the same brutal tests. Some exhibited the same regenerative traits, though none as pronounced as the first soldier. Still, the evidence was clear: humans, as a species, had a latent potential that the Zirith had never considered. This wasn't just an anomaly, this was evolution at its most profound. The Zirith scientists, for all their brilliance, couldn't fully understand how or why the humans could regenerate. They speculated that it was some form of evolutionary adaptation, perhaps a response to Earth's harsh environments, or the constant conflicts that had shaped human history. Whatever the reason, the Zirith knew they had to control it. If humans could regenerate, they could become a far more dangerous foe than anticipated. As the days passed, the Ziritha's initial confidence began to waver. What had started as a routine invasion had now turned into something far more complex. They had expected Earth to fall easily, yet now, they were facing an enemy that could heal itself, an enemy that refused to die. The Zirith, for the first time in their long history of conquest, felt a flicker of uncertainty. They had always believed that technology and superior intelligence would guarantee their dominance. But now, as they stared at the regenerating humans in their labs, they began to wonder if they had finally met their match. The stakes had never been higher. What the Zirith had discovered was more than just a biological quirk, it was the key to humanity's survival, and perhaps even their own undoing. With the discovery of human regeneration, the Ziritha's focus shifted. They had seen glimpses of the potential within humans, and now they were determined to exploit it. The initial experiments had only scratched the surface. If some humans could regenerate, surely others would possess similar traits. The Zirith set out to capture more of Earth's population, prioritizing those who had shown even the slightest sign of rapid healing during combat. Soldiers became prime targets, as their constant exposure to injury made them more likely candidates for testing. Civilians, too, were taken, men, women, and children alike, all snatched from the remnants of cities still smoldering from the invasion. The Ziritha's methods were cold and efficient. Entire neighborhoods were rounded up, the people separated based on physical condition, age, and any history of surviving wounds. The soldiers in particular were treated as prize specimens, herded into massive ships bound for the medical labs. Meanwhile, Earth's military forces were in disarray. The few remaining pockets of resistance were struggling to regroup after the Ziritha's onslaught. With each passing day, more humans were taken, and fewer were left to fight. Inside the Ziritha's laboratories, the captured humans faced horrors beyond imagination. What began as clinical observation quickly devolved into gruesome experimentation. The Zirith scientists, driven by their lust for discovery, pushed the boundaries of what the human body could endure. Their subjects were mutilated, limbs severed, organs removed, bodies subjected to extreme temperatures and radiation, all in the name of science. But each time, the humans healed. Wounds that should have been fatal closed within minutes. Burns that would have left nothing but ash were regenerated in hours. The Zirith marveled at the resilience of their captives, but their fascination was far from benign. To the Zirith, ethical boundaries were irrelevant. Humans were not seen as sentient beings, but as tools for unlocking the next step in biological warfare. The more they experimented, the more they came to believe that human regeneration was the key to creating an unstoppable army. They could weaponize this ability, turn it into a tool that would cement their dominance across the galaxy. Their vision was terrifying, an army of soldiers who could not be killed, who could regenerate from any wound, and who would fight relentlessly until every enemy was destroyed. The Zirith leadership fully embraced this vision. The idea of immortality, of creating warriors who could endure endless battles without falling, consumed them. They instructed their scientists to accelerate the experiments. No cost was too great, no human life too valuable to sacrifice. They began fusing their advanced technology with human biology, injecting nanites into their subjects, altering their DNA, and attempting to amplify the regenerative process. Their goal was to create super soldiers, mindless beings who would heal from any injury and follow orders without question. But things didn't go as planned. The first experiments were failures. While the regenerative process could be enhanced, the human spirit proved to be a more formidable obstacle. Despite the physical alterations, the human subjects retained their sense of self, their will to fight against their captors. Many of them resisted the Ziritha's attempts to turn them into obedient soldiers, sabotaging the experiments from within. Some took their own lives, knowing that death would at least rob the Zirith of their victory. Others, despite their enhanced abilities, broke free and fought back against the alien scientists, causing chaos in the labs. The Zirith hadn't anticipated this level of resistance. They had assumed that once they had control over human biology, they could bend the species to their will. But the strength of the human spirit, the refusal to submit, the deep-seated desire for freedom, proved to be a factor they couldn't easily suppress. This defiance frustrated the Zirith, but it also intrigued them. They had never encountered a species that resisted so fiercely, that fought even when survival seemed impossible. It was both a flaw and a strength in the human design, and the Zirith were determined to overcome it. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the remnants of the human resistance were not idle. Word of the Ziritha's experiments had reached them through escaped prisoners and intercepted communications. They realized that the aliens weren't just interested in conquest, they were attempting to unlock the secret of human regeneration for their own purposes. This revelation became a rallying cry for Earth's remaining forces. If the Zirith succeeded in their experiments, humanity would be enslaved, and their ability to regenerate would become their greatest curse. The resistance, though battered and diminished, began to regroup. Small cells of soldiers and civilians banded together, sharing intelligence and resources. They knew they couldn't fight the Zirith head-on, but they could disrupt the experiments, sabotage supply lines, and strike at the alien infrastructure. Their goal wasn't just to survive, it was to stop the Zirith from using human regeneration as a weapon. As the Zirith poured more resources into their experiments, Earth's resistance grew stronger. The knowledge of what the aliens were trying to achieve gave the humans a renewed sense of purpose. They weren't just fighting for their planet anymore, they were fighting to preserve their very humanity. The more brutal the Ziritha's methods became, the more determined the resistance grew. Every experiment, every atrocity, only strengthened their resolve. Earth's remaining forces began to organize counterattacks. These were small but effective, targeting key Zirith facilities and freeing human captives wherever they could. Each successful raid bolstered their ranks with newly freed soldiers and civilians, some of whom had undergone the regenerative experiments and now possessed enhanced healing abilities. These new recruits became vital to the resistance effort, their regenerative powers allowing them to survive missions that would have been suicide for ordinary soldiers. The Zirith, for all their technological superiority, were now facing an enemy that refused to be crushed. The humans were adapting, learning from each defeat, and growing stronger with each passing day. The aliens, once so confident in their ability to dominate, now found themselves in a race against time. The longer the resistance held out, the more likely it was that the Zirith would fail to control the regenerative abilities they sought to weaponize. The experiments, once seen as the key to ultimate victory, were now becoming a liability. The human captives, even those enhanced by Zirith technology, were rebelling. The labs, once places of cold calculation and discovery, were turning into battlegrounds as human subjects fought back against their captors. The Zirith had underestimated humanity once again, not just their physical resilience, but their will to survive, to fight, and to remain free. As Earth's resistance continued to grow, the Zirith were forced to confront a reality they had never anticipated. Humanity was not just another species to conquer. They were something far more dangerous, a species that could regenerate not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. And that made them a threat the Zirith had never faced before. The remnants of Earth's forces were scattered, but hope had not been extinguished. In the shadows of cities reduced to rubble and forests scorched by alien weapons, a group of survivors began to organize. This was the heart of the resistance, made up of soldiers, civilians, and anyone willing to fight for humanity's survival. At the center of it all was a man known only as Ghost. He had earned his name through his uncanny ability to disappear into thin air, evade capture, and strike back when least expected. Ghost wasn't a hero in the traditional sense. He was pragmatic, ruthless when necessary, but deeply committed to freeing his people. His leadership brought together what little remained of Earth's fighting spirit. Ghost had managed to keep his group hidden from the Zereth for months, gathering intelligence on their operations. Through intercepted communications and the testimonies of those who had escaped captivity, he learned about the alien experiments on human regeneration. This knowledge became the linchpin of their plan. If they could stop the Zereth from perfecting their experiments, humanity might have a chance to turn the tide of the war. Ghost and his team prepared meticulously, knowing that any mistake could mean the end of their fragile resistance. Their target was one of the Zereth's main research facilities, a place where some of the most horrific experiments on human captives were taking place. The stakes were clear. If they succeeded, they would deal a crippling blow to the Zereth's plans. If they failed, they might doom humanity entirely. The night of the raid arrived. Under Ghost's command, the team moved with precision. They had studied the alien facility from afar, identified weak points in its defenses, and prepared for every possible outcome. Their approach was silent, using the cover of darkness to avoid detection. The Zereth were highly advanced, but their overconfidence had left gaps in their security. Ghost's team exploited these weaknesses, slipping past guards and automated defenses, inching closer to the heart of the lab. As they infiltrated deeper, the horrors of what the Zereth were doing became increasingly clear. They found rooms filled with grotesque machinery, devices designed to inflict maximum pain, all in the name of forcing humans to regenerate faster. The walls were lined with tanks containing half-dead humans, their bodies repeatedly torn apart and rebuilt, only to be destroyed again. Ghost had expected cruelty from the Zereth, but this was beyond anything they had imagined. It steeled their resolve. This facility had to be destroyed. Moving further into the base, they encountered more of the captives. These people had been subjected to the regeneration experiments for so long that they had become almost unrecognizable. Some were broken beyond repair, their minds shattered by the constant pain and torment. But others, those who had retained their sanity, were different. These captives had developed enhanced regenerative abilities, far beyond what the Zereth had expected. They had become stronger, faster, and able to recover from wounds that would have killed anyone else. Ghost and his team freed as many of these people as they could, arming them with whatever weapons they could find. Some of the newly freed captives were hesitant, unsure if they could still fight after all they had endured. But others, fueled by anger and a desire for revenge, joined the resistance without hesitation. It was during this rescue that Ghost and his team learned the full extent of the Zereth's plan. One of the captives, a scientist who had been forced to work with the aliens, explained that the Zereth intended to create an army of regenerating human slaves. These slaves would be used to conquer other worlds, spreading the Zereth's dominion across the galaxy. The aliens believed that with enough time and experimentation, they could perfect a version of the human genome that would heal endlessly and obey without question. This revelation sent shockwaves through the resistance. They knew the Zereth had been experimenting, but the idea of humanity being twisted into an eternal race of mindless soldiers was more than they could bear. It solidified their mission. The facility had to be destroyed at all costs. The final push came with Ghost's team planting explosives throughout the base. The Zereth were becoming aware of the infiltration, and alarms blared through the facility as alien soldiers began to mobilize. A firefight erupted, with the resistance fighting alongside the liberated captives. The battle was fierce, with Ghost and his team outnumbered and outgunned, but their desperation gave them an edge. They fought with everything they had, knowing there was no room for failure. The chaos that ensued was a mix of blood, fire, and destruction. Ghost led the charge, directing his team to the most critical areas of the lab, ensuring the explosives were placed in spots that would cause maximum damage. The Zereth soldiers, initially confident in their superior technology, were caught off guard by the sheer tenacity of the humans. Even as they inflicted wounds on their attackers, they watched in disbelief as the newly liberated regenerators healed and continued to fight back. With the explosives in place, Ghost signaled the retreat. His team, along with the freed captives, made a desperate dash for the exits as the countdown ticked away. Zereth forces were closing in, but they were too late. As Ghost and the others cleared the facility, the bombs detonated, engulfing the alien lab in a series of massive explosions. The ground shook as the facility collapsed, sending debris and fire into the sky. The destruction of the lab was a monumental victory for the Resistance. Not only had they dealt a significant blow to the Zereth's research efforts, but they had also freed a number of human captives, many of whom now possessed enhanced regenerative abilities. These new allies would become crucial to the Resistance's efforts in the coming battles. Ghost and his team returned to their base, battered but victorious. The destruction of the facility was more than just a tactical win, it was a symbol of hope. For the first time since the invasion began, the Resistance had struck a real blow against the Zereth. They had shown that humanity could fight back, even against overwhelming odds. And with their new regenerative allies, they knew they had a fighting chance to reclaim their planet. The Resistance, now emboldened, began to prepare for the next phase of their plan. The battle for Earth was far from over, but for the first time, they believed they could win. The destruction of the lab had not only set back the Zereth's experiments, but also shattered their illusion of invincibility. Humanity had proven that it would not go quietly into the night. The real war was just beginning, and the Resistance was ready to fight for every inch of their world. The destruction of the Zereth lab had struck a nerve deep within their command. Furious and humiliated by their failure to weaponize human regeneration, the alien leaders decided to make one final, desperate move. They gathered their full military might, a force unmatched in size and firepower, and prepared to launch a devastating, all-out assault on Earth. Their plan was simple: crush the human Resistance before it could become any more dangerous. Alien ships darkened the skies, their weapons primed to obliterate what remained of Earth's cities. The Zereth believed this would be a swift and decisive victory. They still clung to the idea that humanity, though resilient, was no match for their technological superiority. What they didn't realize was how much the tide had shifted since the destruction of their labs. The humans had learned more about their alien invaders than the Zereth knew about them. The Resistance had discovered weaknesses in their tactics and technology. But more importantly, they had realized that their greatest weapon was not in their machines or strategies, but in their ability to regenerate, to rise from every defeat stronger than before. This knowledge had given them a new sense of hope, and they were ready to fight for their survival. The Zereth might have believed they could crush humanity with sheer force, but they had underestimated just how much the human spirit, combined with their new regenerative abilities, could turn the tide. As the alien ships descended, unleashing waves of destruction upon Earth's remaining strongholds, the human Resistance was ready. Ghost and his team, now leading a coalition of regenerative fighters, launched a counterattack unlike any the Zereth had faced. The battle that followed was nothing short of epic. The humans charged into the fray, knowing that even if they fell, they would rise again. Their bodies, now accustomed to regeneration, healed rapidly from every injury, turning what should have been a massacre into a relentless and terrifying fight for the Zereth. Every time a human soldier was struck down, they would regenerate within moments, getting back up to continue the fight. The Zereth, used to their enemies falling permanently after a single blow, were horrified. Their weapons, no matter how advanced, seemed useless against these humans who simply refused to stay dead. The sight of their enemies rising again and again struck fear into the hearts of the Zereth soldiers. No matter how many they shot, sliced, or burned, the humans kept coming. What had once been a one-sided slaughter was now a nightmare for the aliens. The battle raged on, but the Zereth's morale was crumbling. The humans were proving to be more than just a nuisance, they were unstoppable. The regenerative abilities of the fighters had made them nearly invincible, and the Zereth's forces began to falter. For the first time in their history of conquest, they were facing an enemy that didn't fear death. This resilience, this refusal to surrender, was something they had never encountered before. Amid the chaos, Ghost led the final assault. He and his elite team had one goal: take down the Zereth command. They fought their way through the alien forces, pushing deeper toward the massive command ship that hovered above the battlefield. This ship housed the Zereth leadership, the ones who had orchestrated the invasion and the experiments on human captives. It was the heart of the Zereth's operations, and if Ghost could destroy it, the invasion would be over. Using the knowledge they had gained from the Zereth's experiments, Ghost and his team sabotaged the alien technology. They infiltrated the command ship, taking out critical systems and disarming the most advanced defenses. The Zereth had never expected the humans to get this far, and they were unprepared for the level of precision and strategy the Resistance employed. What they thought would be an easy extermination of the human race had turned into a fight for their own survival. Inside the command ship, the final confrontation took place. Ghost and his team engaged the Zereth commanders in brutal, close-quarters combat. The aliens, though physically stronger and equipped with advanced weapons, were unprepared for the humans' ability to regenerate even in the heat of battle. Ghost himself, having been injured multiple times, regenerated before the eyes of the alien commanders, striking fear into them as they realized they were facing an enemy they could not defeat with conventional means. Every wound they inflicted healed almost instantly, and the humans kept pushing forward. The Zereth commanders, once so confident in their superiority, were now panicking. They had never experienced a defeat like this. For all their technological advancements, for all their knowledge of biology and warfare, they had failed to understand the true power of humanity's regenerative abilities, not just in body, but in spirit. The will to survive, to protect their planet, and to fight for freedom had made humans more dangerous than the Zereth had ever imagined. With the command ship sabotaged and the alien leadership in disarray, the Zereth forces on Earth began to retreat. The battle, once thought to be the end of humanity, was turning into a victory for the human race. As the alien ships fled the planet, the skies cleared, revealing a world that had been battered but not broken. The human resistance stood victorious, not just because of their ability to heal, but because they had outlasted the invaders, proving once again that their resilience was unmatched. As the dust settled, Ghost and his team surveyed the battlefield. The cost had been high, but the victory was undeniable. The Zereth had been driven back, their plans for domination shattered. Earth, though scarred by war, remained free. For the survivors, this victory was more than just the defeat of an enemy. It was a testament to the power of regeneration, not just of the body, but of the soul. The ability to rebuild, to recover, and to rise again had saved humanity from extinction. In the aftermath, the world would need to heal, both physically and emotionally. The scars of the war would remain, but so would the lessons learned. Humanity had faced annihilation and had emerged stronger than ever. Their regenerative abilities had been the key to their survival, but their will to fight, to adapt, and to overcome had been their greatest weapon. The final message was clear: humanity's true strength lay in its refusal to give up, no matter the odds. The Zereth, for all their power, had underestimated the one thing they couldn't understand: humanity's unbreakable spirit. And in the end, that was what had won the war.